generations to come.
Welcome to another edition of the TDN Writers Room podcast. My name is Bill Finley. I'm a correspondent for the TDN. I also co-host the SiriusXM radio show Down the Stretch.
How y'all doing on this beautiful Tuesday morning when we tape? I'm Randy Moss of NBC Sports here in my home office.
No sign of Lucy. Where's Lucy?
There must be food upstairs. I don't know. She may come rolling in here and get on the couch in a little while.
All right, I'm Zoe Cadman here with First Racing. I'm actually at beautiful Keeneland for the Keeneland sale, which we will be talking about. There's a good view. And if you actually look out the other side, when we had Shannon Arvin on last week and she was talking about all the building they're doing here, I mean, you've got to see this to actually believe it. It is going to be magnificent once it's finally done. Actually getting to the grandstands like a maze, actually trying to find your way here because everything is blocked off.
Wow.
But you saw what Churchill Downs looked like, Randy. That was pretty terrific. This is going to be on par with that. It's going to be pretty amazing.
Are they still keeping sort of the country club look when you pull up to Keeneland?
I would imagine they will be. Nothing's been faced with stone yet because they're still in the building process. There's like the massive office building out there with Tyvek siding all across it right now. So I would imagine it's all going to look the same, but it is a big, big project.
Wow.
All right, so speaking of Keeneland, now we are recording this on a Tuesday. Matter of fact, before the sale is really rolled on into the day. But we need to talk about day one because, Randy and I both aren't real experts on this. So we're going to lean heavily on Zoe. You're our resident sales expert. But it looked like by all numbers, a very successful sale. And a couple of the numbers that are coming out of it, 14 horses sold for $1 million or more, and they were bought by 14 different people. Zoe, how unusual is that?
It's very unusual, and it's actually huge. The top 21 horses were purchased by 20 different entities. Wow. There are people from everywhere here right now. You've got China, Japan, Taiwan, South Africa, France, England, South Carolina. Not that that's everywhere, but just the amount of people that came in. Princess Haya was here yesterday looking up horses. There are every kind of people here, which makes it just an absolutely terrific global sale, especially for books 1 and 2. Now, we're filming this on Tuesday, and so we've only had one day of sales so far. These are some of the highlights. The average rose 11%. And the median rose 12.5%. Now, the median is basically the one gauge you want to look at. Went from $400,000 to $450,000. That's a big difference from last year. A lot of horses are selling. Generally, the sale is on par with last year's numbers after day one. We'll see how it goes throughout the sale. But the 14 yearlings for $1 million or more included a $2.2 million Gunrunner colt from 4-Star who went to Mandy Pope. A couple of first croppers that you don't usually see garnering so much money. Charlatans have been very well received. Coolmore bought this one for $1.4 million. Out of Guarana, Hillendale consigned him. He was absolutely gorgeous. Maxfield was also represented with $1 million horse. So a little bit of everything at Keeneland, including the first crop sires, standing up and just showing that they're here. And of course, gun runners. I mean, you want to talk about a super sire. I don't think I've ever seen so many good looking gun runners. It's just an amazing place to be. And to see all these different horses in one place, I don't know, I'm speechless. It's very, very cool. Now, trying to buy them could be a different matter. Marette Farrell, who I helped, she got one yesterday and will continue throughout the sale. But to get one on day one's pretty tough going anyway.
Of those 14 horses, 5 of them were by Gunrunner, and his average sale price was $835,000. Is this emblematic of his stature? Is he the number one sire in the sport?
It's going to get there. I mean, he's going to, Tappett's getting much older now, right? So he's basically passed the torch. Carlin's an old man now. So it's going to be Gunrunner and the new guns, and he just stamps them. They're just so athletic. And, his sons are running too, and it's going to be Gunrunner, not this time, You got the freshman sire like Charlatan and Maxfield. It's a really exciting bunch of horses.
We talked about all the different people that were buying horses and the very expensive ones at the sale, but two of the biggest buyers in the sport were relatively quiet. I mean, for them, John Stewart bought 2 horses and Mike Rapoli bought only 1. We're used to, especially with Rapoli, him hauling 40 horses out of this sale and bringing them back to Todd Pletcher's barn. What do you think their game plan is, Zoe?
Well, listen, we got $14 million yearlings sell on day one. Last year, there were 8 and 23 in total for book 1, which is sold over 2 days. So a lot of people generally sit on their laurels on book 1. The fact they didn't yesterday for day 1 of book 1 means they're going to come at it hard today and tomorrow, the next few days until the dark day on Friday. By the time this airs, there's probably going to be $40 million horses that have passed through the ring. I do want to remind you that the TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Keeneland. And yes, I am at Keeneland, and the Keeneland September sale is underway. And the weekend provided some good updates for some of the later books. Let's start with hit number 1069, who I actually looked at this morning. That's a half-brother to Tenma, who got a huge update when his big sister won the Grade 1 debutante on Saturday. Tenma herself was a Keeneland September graduate, and hip 1069 sells Thursday with Stone Farm. Go down and see Arthur. He might play you a tune on his guitar. Hip 2024 is the half-brother to Howard Wolowitz, who won the Grade 1 Franklin Simpson Stakes on Saturday. He does sell Monday in book 4. That's next Monday. We're here a long time at Keeneland. And the Keeneland September graduate Hang the Moon won the Grade 2 John C. Mabie Stakes on Saturday, providing a valuable update for his half-brother, Hip 1701 by City of Light, who sells Sunday in book 3 with Brookdale Sales. We'll be right back after this message from Keeneland.
At Keeneland, a horse will always be measured in hands. Hands that see, that sense, that speak. Hands that hold our sport to a higher standard, not for our sake, but for theirs, for the love of the horse, for generations to come.
And now for the fastest horse of the week, brought to you this week by Constitution, one of the fast sires at One Star Farm. We like to call him America's sire. Get it? America, Constitution. It all kind of fits together nicely. Constitution, by the way, when you look at the leading sire list of 2024, is all over the place. He's the 3rd leading general sire behind only Into Mischief and the aforementioned Gunrunner. He's the 2nd leading sire of 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds. And he's the 2nd leading turf sire. On Monday, he was also represented by a $1 million yearling in the first session of Keeneland September. And you can find your Constitution coming up at the rest of the Keeneland September sale. Now, the fastest horse of the week ran Saturday at Kentucky Downs. For my money, the best performance we've seen so far at Kentucky Downs, and we've seen a lot of good ones, and that would be Cogburn, who continued his turf sprint tour de force with a 3 1/4 length win in the turf sprint at 6.5 furlongs. To win any turf sprint by 3 1/4 lengths, you really got to be moving, and Cogburn ran a 107 Beyer speed figure in that race to go along with his 2 most recent figs of 111 and 107. He's clearly the early leader right now for the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. And by the way, in winning that race at Kentucky Downs, Cogburn avenged his only previous turf defeat, which was in this very race last year, in which he finished 5th. Cogburn now 6 for 7 lifetime on the grass, and he is this week's fastest horse of the week.
Well, we're delighted on this week's Thoroughbred Daily News Writers Room podcast, a very special guest, none other than Aidan O'Brien, one of the greatest trainers of all time, and somebody who's going to probably make a lot of noise in the U.S. in the Breeders' Cup races coming up. Aidan, thanks for joining us. And all the buzz for City of Troy has reached our shores. We've heard about how good he is. We've heard about what you think of him. But when did you start thinking about the Breeders' Cup Classic for him, and why the dirt instead of turf?
Yeah, I suppose it was always on our mind. Obviously, Bill, we've never won a classic. We've been placed in it a good few times. It's obviously a race that we'd love to win, and but we know that you need an exceptional horse to do it. Really, obviously he's by Justify, which makes it very exciting, and always made it look like he could be very special for us. He's pacey, he's hardy, he's stays, he's determined. He has all the things we think could have, and he could have to make it happen. But obviously, it's a big ask to run on the dirt first time, and a horse that's not trained on it. But we've went close with horses before, obviously, like a Giant's Causeway and those horses.
So you say he's not trained on it yet. This is pretty interesting, I think. We find it over here fascinating. The plans going forward, the immediate future for City of Troy, the September 20th workout at Southwell with an American starting gate with other. Explain to us the thoughts behind that and the logistics involved in getting it done.
Yeah, sure. I suppose, Randy, he'll fly over. It'll be like a race day for him. It'll be an artificial surface. It's not dirt, but it's as close as probably we can get from here. And we don't want too big a change too quickly either. So it's a little bit of a change off of what he is used to. Obviously it'll be out American gates with horses. We'll probably go a mile. And we'll probably do as much as we can to have him as ready as we can without changing his whole regime every day. I suppose that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to do it a little gently, really, rather than one big shock. And obviously then the next one would be more severe for him.
How many horses do you anticipate working with him?
I suppose between 5 and 8, we think. Yeah, so we'll probably... So it'll depend on what way it'll be. But we think we'd probably need at least 5.
So, Aidan, let me get this straight. You're going to load 5 or 8 horses onto the Ballydoyle Plain, take them to Southall, and you're also taking your American starting gate. When did you get an American starting gate at Ballydoyle? And can you just explain to everybody the difference between the English and the American ones? And why?
They're bigger, they're stronger, they're closer. They go more to the ground, and obviously the bell, and there is a different feel to them. We've had them a long time now, but has made a big difference to us when we go to America with the horses. It's a whole different feel. The stalls look bigger, but they're not. They're tighter because the sides come in closer than our stalls do here. So I suppose we're always trying to improve, and when we do go over to try have as much practice done for whatever situation we have to deal with, I suppose. Zoe.
Will you use a handler? Because I know that's been problematic in the past, because you might not have one, but there'll be a guy next door that could spook your horse.
Yeah, we probably will. Like our horses are very used to it all the time. From the time they start going into stalls, we treat them like the way you treat your horses in America, with a handler, goes in there, sits with them, and like all the horses, we do that all the time, so that if or when we go to America, there's no real change.
Would the plan be to expose him to kickback in this?
I think so. Well, the surface we're going to work on it. Ryan said there's not much kickback anyway. I'm not sure. My experience of kickback, they either take it or they don't, and obviously you do your best not to be in kickback. I think that's the way I think all trainers approach it in America. If you're in the situation, you're getting it, you can't do anything about it. But in an ideal world, you don't want to be getting it, really. Sure you don't.
Now, still several weeks to go, but Aidan, City of Troy will be the headliner. Can you just, at this point in time, can you tell us of other horses you're thinking of bringing to the Breeders' Cup?
Yeah, I suppose it's early, but we would have a lot of horses. Obviously, we have the filly Content. She won the Yorkshire Oaks, and then we obviously would have 2-year-olds, Bill. We always like to take a colt and a filly, and I suppose Whistle Jacket is another one as a possible. He won the Morney. He's going to run in the Middle Park next. So all those type of horses, really. Obviously, come that time of the year, who's well, but like one thing we have learned, the horses have to be very good, have to be top class to go there. So it's like, obviously we approach it like all Group 1s, that if they're good enough, we'll take them and try, and if they're not, we won't.
So another question I have on the City of Troy topic, we've seen over the years, you've seen over the years, unfortunate late super sire Galileo. The form of Galileo sired horses typically didn't translate that well from grass to dirt, right?
Yes.
The dam of City of Troy, Together Forever, is a daughter of Galileo, with theatrical also on the in that pedigree. So it's almost exclusively turf. And you've got Justify, obviously, as the sire. Does this horse remind you physically, the way he runs, a little bit more of Justify maybe than Together Forever?
I think he's always been, Randy, that way. He goes forward. We stop. He went forward in all his runs as a 2-year-old, and then he kind of blew up on us in the Guineas. His first run, I probably had him too fresh. And after that, we kind of had to take our time with him here. Obviously, the style of racing is a little bit slower here, but I think naturally he's aggressive if you let him be. We haven't, after the first day, we didn't leave him be. But obviously, we had it in our minds, if everything went well the last day, he would be going here next. So Ryan went forward on him, and he did latch on. And I know, knowing the horse, he'd want to go forward more the next day. And if that was the case, that would suit your race, we think.
How good do you feel the Sons of Justify are worldwide? Because it seems like he's got it all. We see him running on dirt and turf over here. He's done well in Australia. He seems to be flying over in Ireland. What is it about him? Because physically looking at him, and I spent a lot of time with him in Southern California, he just looks like your big burly dirt horse. But he's got that.
Yeah, like when we saw him first, like he looked a different breed of Thoroughbred altogether. Like he looked like a big quarter horse, really.
Right.
Yeah, that's when we saw him as the first. Like we could not believe the amount of muscle and the power and the scope and the strength that he had. And then to be able to go get 1.5 miles in the Belmont, like it was freakish, really. So really, he's a different kind of a breed of Thoroughbred than we've seen ever before, we think. His stock of a lot of class. They're very high cruisers. They're very genuine. They're very like Galileos, but they have more speed. But I suppose what he did as a racehorse was just out of this world. Like a horse that didn't run at 2 to win the Triple Crown, and be that size. So we just we hoped. Obviously the boss obviously saw him and he wanted him, and that's why he wanted he was just a different breed of Thoroughbred altogether, and that's what we're so excited about him. The way he's working here on the grass, and he looks like a massive, big, powerful dirt horse, doesn't he, really? So, you're absolutely right.
We always look forward here to seeing the Coolmore horses for the Breeders' Cup. The Breeders' Cup would not even be close to what it is right now without John Magner and the rest of Coolmore and the horses that you've trained coming over here, such sporting gestures year after year after year. How much do you enjoy Del Mar as a site for the Breeders' Cup?
We love it. Obviously, we love walking on the beach. It's unique, isn't it, really? Obviously, when we go to the Breeders' Cup, it's a big, it's great for us to go over and experience it. I think you have to go and experience it to really believe it. The atmosphere and the hype, and it's just very special, really, that time of the year, and all the best horses are there. It's the ultimate test, really.
And it's interesting because when you come to America, you think, you kind of go in and just mind your own business. But you've talked about how much you've learned from American trainers, in particular Bob Baffert and Wesley Ward. What lessons, what have you talked to them, or you just follow them from afar? And what have you learned from them?
I'm not sure. Obviously, we've learned a lot from and always do and try and obviously weigh in as well, So every time we go, we learn a lot, and obviously we would be friendly with all the American trainers, and they're always very forthcoming with information, what we should be doing and what they do, and obviously we see everything that they do as well, and everything now is very public anyway, and it's broadcasted to everybody, which is a big help, I think, to everybody. Listen, information kind of is always the key, and experience of watching what they do and what we should do if we want to be successful or over there with you, really.
What's left for Aidan O'Brien? You have won just about everything, aside from the Breeders' Cup Classic. What are one of your goals that you're like, I really would love to win this race?
Yeah, no, not really. We never approach anything like that. So we always try to do our best with every horse, take it as it comes. And I think if you start doing that, it just becomes too difficult and too much pressure, you know. So we try and do our best with every horse to get the best out of them and try and win whatever races we would like to win. But some races are very difficult. And like obviously, like you said, the Classic, we've never won a Classic, you know, and we've ran very good horses in it. So it's very, very difficult. And we've tried very hard. So all we can do is try again, really.
Would you try the Kentucky Derby? Would you?
Yeah. Well, we have had runners. It's very tough from this part of the world because maybe the preparation isn't as tough to get into it. I think a lot of the horses in the Kentucky Derby, it's tough preparation and they're really ready for it when it does come. Like we wouldn't be able to probably give them that preparation over here. But like everything, it's not impossible, we think. But you just have to have the right horse and you don't win it with a second racer, really.
So on that same general topic, Aidan, one of the big stories of American racing this year, especially this summer, has been that Godolphin and Charlie Appleby have sent basically a full-time string to stay in the United States. I think they've run 19 different horses this year. They've made almost $5 million in purses. Is that something you think that your bosses, the Mr. Magner and Tabor and Smith, might possibly be looking at for the future?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like obviously we have Ballydoyle here and we have all kinds of gallops and it's on a plane journey away, really. That's all. So it's very safe environment here. I don't know whether the lads have looked at that, but and I don't know whether they will or they won't. But it's not a long trip across the sea, really.
Being the hard-hitting journalist that I am, I'm going to ask you a real tough question, if you don't mind, Aidan.
No
What's the story with the dog?
Oh, we're minding her for Anna, and Anna is in America at the moment, in San Francisco, and she's missing Anna. There's two of them there, so that's what's going on. And anybody goes by the door, they think it's Anna. So
we're all dog fans. We enjoy the sound effect. That's really nice.
Yeah, well done.
I've got one more question.
No problem.
Aside, let's get off horses. Does Aidan O'Brien have a bucket list of a place he'd like to see, like to go? Do you want to jump out of an aeroplane? Is there something that you want to do other than horses?
No, like obviously there's lots of stuff, and I don't do much ever. I go racing and I go to the tracks, and I don't get time really to do anything really. That's just the way my life is. It's 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and like if we fail, we've done our best and we can accept it. But if we fail and we haven't, it's just harder, you know. So the time will come, I presume, when that'll happen. But at the moment, like it's full on, and it has been for 25, 30 years, you know. So, but listen, hopefully I see those places on telly at the moment.
We hear that from trainers all the time over here also, Aidan. Like I remember talking to Bob Baffert, and when he had his unfortunate suspension a couple of summers ago, he took his family on a big vacation, and he said it was the first time he'd ever been able to do it. When's the last time you just went on a vacation, left it all behind?
Yes.
A week, 2 weeks?
Yes.
When?
No, so we've never done it really. We go to the Breeders' Cup every year, and then we go from Breeders' Cup. We usually go to Barbados for a week to meet the lads in Barbados. And but this year we won't be because we have Augustus Rodin. The plan is for him to go to Japan after his next run. So we'll be trying to get back here as quick as we can. So hopefully sometime we'll see those places.
I think the Sandy Lane Hotel in Barbados qualifies as a nice vacation.
Exactly.
Hey, Aidan, before we let you go, I have one last question for you. This is the first time, I believe, that you've run horses at Kentucky Downs this year. And, what are your plans in the future going forward? Will we see you participate even more? And how much of a buzz is it creating in Europe with these just unbelievable purses?
Yeah, no, I think it's unbelievable, really. And that's what will bring horses. The purses will bring horses, and that's what's happening. And I think everybody's talking about it. And I think it's only going to become more popular and more popular. Everybody wants to be there. Listen, obviously everyone knows training horses is an expensive operation and has to be funded. And for maybe horses that especially geldings or colts that maybe are not good enough to go to stud. It's a big outlet, and I think everyone is talking about all over the world, you know. So, and I think it's going to get more and more popular, really.
Very good.
Meanwhile, I volunteer to take your place at Sandy Lane Hotel next year when you can't make it. Right?
Maybe we can do the podcast from Sandy Lane.
That's on my bucket list, actually.
Yeah, well done. Well done.
All right. Well, Aidan, we want to thank you for joining us today on the TDN Writers Room podcast. Best of luck with City of Troy. Keep up the good work. You're having a typical great year, and it was a joy to talk to you, and we'll see you at the Breeders' Cup.
Yeah, look forward to it, Bill.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Zoe. Thanks, everybody.
The TDN Writers Room brought to you by that well-known acronym, the PHBA, the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association. And congratulations to another big Kentucky Downs winner. That would be Nisi Marie, bred in the great state of Pennsylvania, winner of the Light and Wonder Ladies Marathon Stakes. It's a grade 3, also on that star-studded Saturday card at Kentucky Downs. She brought home a $600,000 payday for owner Michael Milan and trainer Butch Reed. Nisi Marie's earnings are now over $1 million, and she's at least in the conversation for the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. She was coming off a third place finish, by the way, in the Beverly D, which we'll talk about later. For more information on how you can get involved in this lucrative Pennsylvania breeding and racing program, you got two options. You can visit www.pabred.com, or you can just pick up the phone, your mobile phone, of course, and call 610-444-1050.
The PA Horse Breeders Association presents the new and improved Pennsylvania Stallion Series. 6 $100,000 stakes for PA-sired PA breds and parks. 2 6-furlong contests on PA Derby Day. The 2-year-olds then go 7 furlongs on December 30th. The last 2 races are in August 2025 for 3-year-olds. Then $50,000 in breeder bonuses go to the top 3 horses in the series. For more, go to pabred.com.
With some of the fullest fields in the country and quality racing year-round, there's never been a better time to reap the rewards of breeding and racing in Kentucky. Purse money in Kentucky is at an all-time high, as is average purse per race, outpacing California, Florida, and New York. Kentucky breds. Breed them, raise them, race them. We all win.
And now let's talk about Kentucky breds. There's a lot to talk about here. Kentucky breds swept the Grade 1 races this past weekend. Howard Wolowitz, who Zoe just mentioned, won that $2 million Franklin Simpson Stakes at Kentucky Downs, the first ever Grade 1, by the way, in Kentucky Downs' 34-year history. To that point, it was the first ever Grade 1. Tenma also won the Del Mar Debutante, with Gaming capturing the Del Mar Futurity. Each of the breeders of those 3 winners earned a $7,500 Kentucky Breeders Incentive Fund Award for breeding a Grade 1 winner. You can find your Kentucky bred at the Keeneland September sale going on now through 9/21.
So I want everybody to see my T-shirt. And Randy, they don't make Senor Buscador T-shirts.
Not yet. Not yet.
You think they will? So, okay. So I got one up on you. I got a T-shirt for my favorite horse. You're still waiting for the Senor Buscador T-shirts to come out.
Or the Dermasoda Gake.
or the 2 Phils.
Yes. And,
Where did you get that?
At the Air Manor.
Just on Amazon, you know.
You just Googled Bookham Dano T-shirt?
Yeah. There we go. There were several choices. So anyways.
Hang on, let me Google Senor Buscador T-shirt. Go ahead.
Yeah.
All right. So the Kentucky Downs meet ends tomorrow, which is Wednesday. We're recording this on Tuesday. So some of these things could change. But once again, it's hard to get used to. 6 races on Saturday's card worth $2 million each. Talking about the embarrassment of riches at the Keeneland sale. Well, just on the other side of Kentucky, it's a similar story. They have so much money to give away, and it's working, obviously. Great racing, very good, tremendous betting racing with 14 horses, 12 horses, and all these sort of races. A couple observations. Irad Ortiz, no surprise, rode very well. On Sunday, he won 5 races. He now has 20 wins to be the leading jockey over Tyler Gaffalione and Jose Ortiz's brother. And I'll give you one statistic that I don't know if I can out rabbit hole Randy, but this one I bet you weren't thinking of. Mike Maker is 0 for 39.
You got me. I had that one. Going into the
Wednesday. And I only know that because Zoe told me.
Yeah, I found that hard to believe. 0 for 39.
We should bet on every Mike Maker horse running on Wednesday at Kentucky Downs because the chances of him going on a duck for Kentucky Downs have got to be pretty small, right?
Right.
He's won 7 training titles there. It's absolutely amazing. I mean, he's still a great trainer, but there's some sort of funk going on in that barn right now. So, Zoe, what have you thought of the whole Kentucky Downs extravaganza and anything? What are some of the things people are saying around Keeneland about it?
Hey, you know what? Everybody's loving it. I mean, how could you not? People are just begging to get into the maiden races down there and having fun. BBN Racing, Braxton Lynch is a good friend of mine, and Damien actually went wakeboarding with them last week. I showed Sue the picture. It was kind of ugly. Anyway, they went down to run a couple of horses over the weekend. They won one on Sunday, but they all went down there. They went to the races on Saturday. Nashville's only, 40 minutes away or half an hour away. They all spent the night in Nashville, went out in Nashville, had a great time, went back the next day to the races. The fact that Nashville is such a close proximity to it, people can make a weekend of it and just have a really good, fun time. You can dress however you want when you go there. You can take your cooler and have a picnic, or you can, go to the semi-grandstand. It still would be nice to have a grandstand at Kentucky Downs, Mr. Nicholson, but that's for another time. But everyone's loving it. I've not heard one bad thing about Kentucky Downs. Maybe the turf could be watered a little better. That was the only thing I heard from one trainer. But other than that, who can argue with the money they're putting out there? And it's going right to the purses.
I'll give you one more bad thing about Kentucky Downs in just a second. First of all, they had 2 Breeders' Cup Challenge win-in-your-in races on that Saturday card. There was the Cogburn race, and he continues to just look like, so much better than any other American turf sprinter. Hopefully when we get to Del Mar, all will be well, and we'll get to see how Cogburn stacks up against some of the best from Europe. Grand Sonata also won the Turf Cup at 1.5 miles at 15-1 odds, which is kind of interesting here because of the weak field that the $2 million Turf Cup attracted. And it's because the week before the Sword Dancer was run at Saratoga. And even though the Turf Cup had a $2 million purse compared to $750,000 for the Sword Dancer, the Sword Dancer, the 1, 2, 3 finishers were Farbridge, Measured Time, and Silver Knot, all 3 of whom would have been a solid favorite at Kentucky Downs if they had come for the Turf Cup. And the only explanation that I can offer, Saratoga is Saratoga, obviously, and it's easier for those horses to stay there than to ship. But also, I think there's some concern occasionally about the quirkiness and the uphill, downhill nature of the Kentucky Downs course as opposed to the flat 3-turn 1.5 miles at Saratoga, which they'll also have when they run at Del Mar in the Breeders' Cup. Goliad won the Mint Millions, a grade 3 mile. He's going to be a long shot, though, for the Breeders' Cup mile. Nisi Marie will be a long shot as well. Grand Sonata actually will be a long shot, I think, in the Breeders' Cup turf if he runs there. So anyway, that's the action on the track. The only other bad thing I can say about Kentucky Downs, please, on the behalf of bettors, on the behalf of handicappers, on the behalf of anybody who makes figs, take all of that money and come up with an accurate timing system before you get to next year's Kentucky Downs races. Okay? Please. You got all that money. You can do it. And I think they will.
I was waiting for that one. We got to give kudos to Dick Mandela. Goliad, 2 for 2 at Kentucky Downs. Made 1.45 million in 6 days. Wouldn't I love to own him? Oh, my goodness. 2 for 2. And then Tistastic for Asmussen made a mere 745,000 in 6 days.
And one more thing about that. We see horses at Kentucky Downs. We saw it several times, horses come back on very short rest to take advantage of that purse money. And people say, okay, well, it shows you that horses can do it in the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness. Yeah. And yes, they can do it in the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness. But turf is a little different than dirt. Racing on dirt takes a lot more out of horses than racing on turf. Just running through sand as opposed to running on grass. It's much more strenuous, much more taxing on horses. So trainers are more likely, I think, to come back on very short rest in turf racing than they are in dirt racing. And that played a lot into why that and the purse money, why trainers wanted to, in certain circumstances, wanted to come back on short rest at Kentucky Downs, and it paid off.
And trainers
tend to copy what has worked. And I'm glad you brought this up, Zoe. You know where I stand on this. This is the greatest thing that's happened to horse racing, that these horses came back in 6 days rest. There's been 3 winners so far at the meet who have run a second time at Kentucky Downs. And the race you were talking about, the Mint Million, the horses that ran first and second, not just Goliad, but Cash Equity also came back in 6 days. So if the Chad Browns of the world, who like to give their horses 7 weeks off in between races, are listening, take a lesson from Kentucky Downs. It's not that hard, okay? But you're right. So look at the job Dick Mandela did for owners Perry and Ramona Bass. In 6 day period, the horse wins 2 stakes races. And you're right, Zoe, $1.495 million in earnings in 6 days in 2 races. And I think this is probably going to catch on a little bit more. People will see that it can be done. And hey, did you see what Mandela did with Goliad? I think we can do that this year. We'll run an opening day and then we'll run a little bit later. So it's a breath of fresh air to see that.
And it's the key, if you can get in as well, would be one of the keys to running twice. I'm sure there were several that tried and didn't get in. And then obviously Mandela and Asmussen, I don't know for a fact, but I'm going to guarantee those horses stayed down there. They don't have to train on the dirt, and probably just hand walked, maybe had a jog around the racetrack and just stayed down there in the same climate and did nothing, or probably fresh as a daisy going in 6 days later.
Well, let's move our attention now to Del Mar, where it was closing weekend. And as is expected, Bob Baffert, boy, this is the story you haven't heard before, won both 2-year-old races. The Del Mar Futurity, Baffert won for the 18th time. Amazing with gaming. And he's won 4 straight now. I look back, of his prior 17 winners, only 2 won the Kentucky Derby. That's still very impressive accomplishment. They were American Pharaoh and Silver Charm. I don't know if gaming is going to be added to that list. He was not the most highly liked Baffert horse by the bettors. The horse that was made the favorite was Citizen Bull, another Baffert, and he ran a modest 3rd in there. But gaming right now for Bob Baffert and his buddies Mike Pegram, Mr. Watson, and Mr. Whiteman is on his way, I'm sure, to the Breeders' Cup, Randy.
Yeah, so you have a horse that breaks his maiden as a first-time starter at Del Mar in mid-August, 5.5 lengths, comes back, wins the Del Mar Futurity, okay, length and 3/4. Baffert had a horse in the race that was the favorite, who was a beaten 3rd, while Baffert's other horse wins. Sounds very familiar, right? Okay. That's the sire, Game Winner. This is almost exactly the same scenario between gaming and Game Winner. Game Winner Roadster, I think, was a heavy favorite the year that he ran in the Del Mar Futurity. And they both ran 7 furlongs in one of them went 103.02. Game Winner went 123.02. Game Winner went in 123.18. So yeah, gaming's got looks like he's got a pretty bright future. Got a nice trip. Not just the 18th Del Mar Futurity winner for Baffert, the 4th in which owner Mike Pegram has been either the owner or the co-owner.
And they do that, the 3 amigos. They buy modest-priced horses with Hall of Famer Bob Baffert, and they get lucky. And he got a really good trip. Now, is he going to be the champion 2-year-old? I don't know. Was he on my radar going in? Probably not. He was the recipient, again, of a wonderful ride by Flavian Pratt. Saved all the ground. Did it the right way. Split horses. Getaway car went out there like he does and just ran as fast as he could for as long as he could and didn't manage to hold on. So He got the speed up front that he needed and got a nice patient ride. Had he really had much kickback before? No, but he managed to handle it just fine. And he won nicely. He looked good going away. What fig did he get, Randy?
Not that fast. He got an 82 that maybe could have been a little bit faster, but he's bred to go 2 turns. Obviously, he's by game winner. They'll run him in the American Pharaoh. Meanwhile, the horses on the East Coast, the hopeful horses that were so impressive, Chancellor McPatrick and Ferocious will probably run in the Champagne. So we'll get one more look at these 2-year-olds. I would put the Eastern 2-year-olds maybe I would rate them a little bit more highly than the West Coast 2-year-olds, but you got Baffert and you got the home track advantage out there at Del Mar this fall.
Earlier in the show, we were talking about the Keeneland sale and all the $1 million horses being sold. Zoe, you said something that I really took notice of. You said they buy modest price horses. That's where we're at this day and age. Horse costs $250,000. I mean, I can't buy this horse. Randy can't buy this horse. You can't buy this horse. But I just found that amazing. And you're right. We've gotten to a point in this industry and with the sales where $250,000 is a modestly priced horse. So absolutely amazing what's going on out there. Let's turn our attention now to the 2-year-old filly race run on Saturday at Del Mar, the Del Mar debutante. Baffert's only won this one 11 times. And we had another case of not the favored Baffert winning. Nooney, who's that course that sold for $1.8 million at OBS March, was a heavy favorite and wound up finishing 5th, steadied a little bit in the stretch, but that wasn't going to cost him much. He was already backing up at the time. So Baffert wins it with the backup horse, Tenma, sold for $850,000. Kazuchi Kimura, the young Japanese rider, had a terrific day at Del Mar, won the grade 1 Del Mar debutante, came back and won the grade 2 John C. Maybe. But, Tenma looks good. Long way to the Kentucky Oaks. And also it was interesting too. We're talking about all of these prices, and these are the kind of horses I love. The horse that was a runner-up, Vodka with a Twist, sold for $2,500 at the sale. So the $2,500 horse whipped the $1.8 million horse in the Del Mar debutante.
By this much.
Yeah.
So it was a good race for Tenma. If you say she's the best horse, I think she probably was. She's only this much better than Vodka with a Twist, who ran a heck of a race herself. I still think maybe the Eastern 2-year-olds might be better. Immersive, Quiet Side, who ran obviously in the Spinaway at Saratoga. But again, we'll see when they run around 2 turns. Tenma's owned by the Baoma. I don't know if I say that properly. The Baoma Corporation. That's Charles. Okay, that's Charles Chu. He and his wife, Susan, have been in ownership for a long time. They also won the Del Mar debutante with Bast, who went on to finish 3rd in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies that year. They own Dre Fong, who was a Breeders' Cup Sprint winner, and they own Nisos, who we still haven't seen anything of since a February race and workout. Don't know anything about the plans for Nisos, but Nisos is a son of Nyquist. And so Charles Chu went back to the Nyquist camp to purchase Tenma, who is by Nyquist out of a Tappet mare bred by Bobby Flay. So that's the story with Tenma. Bobby Flay sold her for $850,000, well sold. And the half, is it brother? Yeah, it's a yearling colt, Zoe, by Munnings, right? Is going to be sold in book 2 at Keeneland.
Yeah, and he's lovely. Stone Farm has him. Yeah, really very nice colt indeed. And I looked at him this morning, like I mentioned earlier. Tenma was the recipient, again, of a very, very good ride by Kazuchi Kimura. Kazuchi, Flavian, they've been riding really smart races, and I don't think anyone's been riding any better at Del Mar all summer than Kazuchi Kimura. I don't know if he's going to stay, if he's given up Woodbine altogether. I'm not sure, but we'd love to have him in Southern California. And I'm with you, Randy, as far as the superstars, the fillies and the colts. It's a definite East Coast bias, at least for now. Now, the West Coast is going to be 2 jumps ahead with it being run at Del Mar. But the East Coast horses, in my mind, are better.
And we'll talk about this a lot more, Bill, when we get closer to the Breeders' Cup. But, back in the day, I mean, I know you and I probably had the same opinion about this. The horses going from east to west for the Breeders' Cup, and the stats showed it, the data showed it, were at a substantial disadvantage with the West Coast horses at Santa Anita or Hollywood Park way back in the day. That's changed. because now, because of the horse safety issues that have come to the forefront, the surfaces in Southern California have changed a little bit. They're not as hard and fast as they used to be. They have a little bit more of an East Coast consistency to them. And so there's not as much of a disadvantage for horses to go from east to west. And we've seen that happen very successfully at the Breeders' Cup the last 2 or 3 times it's been out there.
And one other thing is the weather. You know, it's November and the weather can hamper a lot of training on the East Coast. The West Coast, we've just got to worry about wildfires for the most part and 100-degree weather. But you don't really have any interruption in your training. If you're training on the East Coast, it can be miserable at the end of October, especially if you're up there in Saratoga, where like a lot of the Bill Mott horses will stay and then come to Breeders' Cup. Yes, and they're going to love it when they get to Breeders' Cup. But they'll come with woolly coats. I actually get very busy with my clippers around Breeders' Cup time with horses coming in. They show up. They're like, hey, we need to clip this horse. It's 100 degrees here and I've got a winter coat. So that's one of the differences as well with East going West.
And when you're at Del Mar this fall for the Breeders' Cup, you might be able to catch a glimpse of Aidan O'Brien walking on the beach.
Barefoot. He better have his shoes off. I mean, if he's walking with shoes and black socks on, that's not gonna do it. Definitely not going to do it.
I remember the last time at Del Mar for the Breeders' Cup, checked in the hotel. I forgot where they put us, at Holiday Inn or something. And the pool was just packed. Absolutely packed, wall to wall with people that were like as white as this. They were all Europeans who were around the pool to get some sunshine coming in from the UK and Ireland. It was really pretty cool.
Yeah, 3 days later, 3rd-degree burns. They all look like lobsters.
Yeah. 3 days later, they look like this. Right?
The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by XBTV, and the XBTV work of the week is this pretty gray mare, Sweet Azteca. She worked let me put my tongue tie on. She worked 4 furlongs on Saturday at Del Mar in a sparkling 47-1. Now, she definitely got some unwanted company, as you can see right here. Michael McCarthy trains her. She's coming off a 4-race winning streak dating back to February, 4 in a row, which includes the Grade 1 Beholder Mile, the Grade 2 Great Lady M, and the Grade 3 Rancho Bernardo last time out. She made points to the Grade 3 Chillingworth Stakes Santa Anita on October the 5th, according to her trainer, Michael McCarthy. She could not possibly be doing any better right now.
Be a smarter, better with XBTV. The best horses. With thousands of exclusive morning workouts. All at your fingertips and delivered right into your inbox. Everything you need to be informed. Be smart. Bet smart with XBTV.
All the thrills. Fraction of the bills. Experience the power of the partnership. Change your life, make new friends, and compete at the highest level of thoroughbred racing. West Point Thoroughbreds, the gold standard in racing partnerships. Visit westpointtb.com.
And the TDN Writers Room also brought to you by our good friends at West Point Thoroughbreds, which, as you might expect, is putting on a full court press right now at Keeneland for the Keeneland September sale to come up with their next successful racing prospects. The stable, by the way, a co-owner of Keeneland's September graduate, Vava, the winner this spring on Kentucky Derby weekend of the Derby City Distaff of Grade 1. Vava will most likely train up now to the Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Sprint at Del Mar for trainer Cherie DeVoe. To learn more about how you can get involved with this fun at West Point Thoroughbred, you can go to West Point TB as in thoroughbred, westpointtb.com.
Well, the focus on racing this weekend will be up in Canada at Woodbine, where there are 4 Grade 1 races on Saturday's card: the Summer Stakes, the E.P. Taylor, the Natama, and the Woodbine Mile. Again, we have to apologize for this because we have to talk about this sometimes before the past performances are out. So we're doing a little bit of guesswork here. But Randy, you were talking about Naval Power in the Woodbine Mile, and at first glance, it looks like that's the horse to beat.
Yeah, I mean, what a card. Well, 6 stakes in all with the 4 Grade 1s as well. But Naval Power has been in good form for Godolphin and Charlie Appleby. And looking at the PPs of the possible starters / probable starters, it looks like Naval Power to me might be a pretty solid favorite. And then in the E.P. Taylor, it looks like Moira and Bev Rover, the 1-2 finishers in the Beverly D at Colonial, will probably go to the E.P. Taylor. And it could make for a heck of a matchup, because if Appleby also brings Cinderella's Dream, who won the Belmont Oaks and the Saratoga Oaks, that's going to be a heck of a race, because we know how good Moira is, right? Last year's Canadian Horse of the Year has run well at Woodbine, as has Fev Rover, who's talented herself. And I'm also, as always, looking forward to the 2-year-olds in the summer and the Natama, because those are always key races looking ahead to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf and Juvenile Fillies Turf. I can't wait.
Randy, we'll just put it on the record a little bit. You've got Moira was Horse of the Year in Canada in 2022.
2022, okay.
Was Horse of the Year in Canada in 2023.
The last
and those two grass fillies, they're going to knock heads again in the E.P. Taylor.
There you go.
Other horses a note in the mile, My Boy Prince, who was the beaten favorite in the King's Plate, is supposed to go. And the horse by the name of Big Rock, who has had kind of a lousy year this year, going 0 for 3, but did win one of the most prestigious races in Europe last year when he won the QE2 stakes at Royal Ascot. So those are some of the names we will see this weekend at Woodbine.
I'm really looking forward to seeing one more time in the Natama. And you mentioned 2-year-olds. What about Churchill this weekend?
Yes.
And the Iroquois.
Okay, but I was going to save that for the Road to the Derby segment we're going to do. So let's get right into it. The Iroquois goes this Saturday, and it's the first race on the Road to the Triple Crown. So we're going to talk about some of the changes they made. But Zoe, what about the Iroquois?
It's a really good race. This is like a Breeders' Cup 2-year-old kind of race in here, and it's a full field. It's already been drawn. First Resort for Owen Harty, Giacoso for DeSormo, Jack's Time. Kelly Von Hemmel just broke his maiden by 10. Authentic Strike, Rudy Brissett. Owen Almighty for Brian Lynch, Strummin. Sandman, who was a $1.2 million galloper at the OBS March sale for Mark Cassie. Magnitude's a good colt, broke his maiden for Asmussen at Ellis Park. Firmus for Wayne Catalana. Jonathan's Way had an 85 by a speed figure at Saratoga, breaking his maiden for Phil Bauer. Massaro, a very nice Not This Time colt who came out of Keeneland last September for CJ Thoroughbreds and Delia Nash. And then Politically Correct. It is a really, really good field, and it's one that everyone at Keeneland here will be glued to. Who do you like, Randy?
Well, I haven't really had a chance to look at it that much, but there's also the Pocahontas.
Yes.
For 2-year-old fillies. And these 2 races, I mean, they're going to be front and center usually in producing some horses that'll wind up going out to Del Mar for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and Juvenile Fillies. So a couple of very important races, 2 of 3 graded stakes on the opening weekend card at Churchill, which, by the way, we go Kentucky Racing migrates from all turf at Kentucky Downs to all dirt at Churchill Downs, which is not running any grass races as they try to rehabilitate their problematic turf course this fall.
Boy, that is a never-ending story with that turf course.
Does the turf have COVID at Churchill? Like long COVID? Like it just keeps coming back and never quite recovers. It's got like the worst kind of long COVID ever.
It's puzzling to me why they can't grow Kentucky bluegrass in Kentucky, but that's maybe a topic for another day.
Okay, so let's talk about the new Road to the Kentucky Derby. Churchill announced a couple changes for 2024/2025, and one of which is they're moving the Virginia Derby turf race run at Colonial Downs. It was run last week to March 15th. I'm going to put it on the dirt and it's going to be a points race for the Kentucky Derby. Churchill owns Colonial Downs, so you can see why they did that. And they didn't show any favoritism for that. It's not like that race is worth more points than other races around the same time. But the other thing that was interesting is, and I don't know where they came up with this from, and I think it's just kind of silly. This new rule where if you in the champion races, they've divided the prep races into two different categories. If you have 5 horses or less, you get 75% of the points. 4 horses or less, 50 points. You would think now that that's, going to be maybe a problem for California. Last year in the San Felipe, there were only 4 horses. Now people are calling it the Baffert tax. Zoe, is it a move to make life a little bit tougher on Bob Baffert?
I mean, from the outside looking in, you would think maybe, considering the problems that Baffert and Churchill have had over the past few years. I don't know if they're just trying to make sure these graded stakes get filled. It's definitely not going to help the cause out in Southern California, where some of the graded stakes struggle to fill. It's going to be difficult. And it's going to be difficult for people that aren't Bob Baffert, that are you like running second or third, because they're not going to garner enough points to get in. So somebody's going to have to move elsewhere and plan their road to the Kentucky Derby a different way that's not through California. And maybe that's just going to kill those stakes altogether. I don't know what the answer is. Perhaps Randy does.
I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I can understand, right? Or I could understand if Churchill Downs Incorporated, who gives Kentucky Derby points to the first 5 placings in all of these designated races, right? If there was a 5-horse field and the last place finisher was going to get points, or a 4-horse field, then just say, okay, only the top 3 get points if you've got a 5-horse field. I could see that. Or a 4-horse field, only the top 2 get points, right? But, to just go across the board for even the winner getting fewer points in those races, to me, I don't agree with that at all.
There's an interesting scenario that it brings up too. Suppose we're getting ready to run the San Antonio Derby and they're hearing that they may not get enough horses for that. The San Felipe is usually, and the Robert B. Lewis is usually more of a problem when it comes to that. Baffert might have 3 horses going in there. I wonder if he would just say, all right, I got 200 3-year-olds here. No, Nathan doesn't have 200, of course, but I'll just throw X, Y, and Z into the race, and you'll have a 6-horse field with 5 Bob Bafferts. He can all by himself guarantee that this quote unquote Baffert tax will not affect him and his horses.
Well, and what's going to wind up happening is the racing office at Santa Anita is going to have to incentivize more trainers of long shots to enter in some of these races to make sure that the races, fill and they don't scratch out, right? They incentivize them with extra rewards for actually racing. And to me, that's almost inevitable in this situation. And it kind of goes against the whole horse safety thing.
Yeah.
Right?
The wrong horses in the wrong races.
Yeah. So I don't get it on several different levels. I don't agree with it.
All right, well, that's a wrap on this edition of the TDN Writers Room podcast. I want to thank our very special guest of the week, Aidan O'Brien. I want to thank my partners, Randy Moss and Zoe Cadman. Where's everybody's dogs today, by the way?
No Lucy.
The house.
Lucy, where'd you go?
I would yell for her, but she's 14. She can't hear very well right now. So.
Oh, all right. Well, we'll get Lucy and everybody else's dogs on next week. But anyways, thank you to you guys. And also thank you to our producers who work so hard behind the scenes. That's Katie Petruniak, Anthony LaRocca, and Leah LaRocca. See you next week.